Hey guys, it's Kasera, and today we're going to be doing my winter TBR. So in my quitting BookTube video from like 2 years ago, I stated that I was not going to be doing TBRs anymore, but here we are. I do love TBRs in some aspects of it, but in other aspects I don't love them because I do like having like a list of books that I want to get to soon. And like I liked having the goals and stuff like that I want to like try to get to, but I also don't like being like tied down to a TBR, if that makes sense. I've been doing like kind of like self TBRs in the month of December and I've been following it pretty well. So starting this year, instead of doing monthly TBRs, because I do feel I can't do the monthlies, I'm gonna do seasonal TBRs. For my winter TBR, I'll be doing January and February. Then each of the seasons after that are going to be 3 months long. So spring, summer, autumn. Also, the thing I loved about TBR videos in particular is when I had reading challenges to pick like the books that I was going to read for those challenges. So I've set myself 3 reading goals and 2 reading challenges for next year. My reading goals are not super specific. I've left them vague intentionally so that I can meet the goals without having to do necessarily that much. But I do have the reading challenges, which are way more specific and will help me on my way to the reading goals. So the first reading goal is to read more physical books. I've noticed that if I can, I will lean into audiobooks and then I will stop reading my physical books, but I enjoy physical books more, so that's why I want to read more physical books next year. My second reading goal is to declutter my shelves, and this one's gonna be a long-term goal, not really that short-term, but most of the books I have on my shelves I bought like 3 or 4 years ago, like back the first time I was on BookTube. And while I think a lot of them are still books I'll end up loving, they're not necessarily books that I'm reaching for because I'm always reaching for like the new thing. I just want to read more books that are on these shelves. Specifically, when I mean declutter my shelves, I mean declutter my unread books, because I have like over 400 unread books, which sounds like a lot, but I also have over 1,000 books, which means that I have about a 60% read rate. And then goal number 3 is to finish more series. There are 2 series in particular that I have in mind for this goal, that being Malazan Book of the Fallen and the Stormlight Archive, but there are a lot of other series that I have started and just haven't gotten back around to, so I do want to work on those as well. For the reading challenges, the first is a read it or unhaul challenge. So for that, I'm gonna end up reading more physical books, definitely, and I'm also going to be reading more of my own books, so my own physical books, if that makes sense. So basically, how I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna pick 1 book from each of my 6 large shelves, 1 book from my miscellaneous shelves, because I have like 3 like smaller shelves that have a lot less books in them, and then 1 extra fantasy book for me to try and read during that season. So I'll have about 3 books per month or so to try and read that are physical books. I think 3 books a month, super doable, so that's why I'm leaving it at that. We'll see how it goes though, because there are a lot of other books that I want to read, but those will be my priorities for the month. Alrighty, for this challenge, we're gonna do it point of view style so you can see what I'm looking at while I'm talking. So first, we're gonna start with these side shelves. So I need 1 from my shelf over there, which is my classic shelf, and then 1 from my sci-fi shelf. So we're gonna start with the classic shelf. It does have all these book of the month books at the top, but I think since January and February are going to be pretty like light on like more work for me, it's gonna be some of the lightest months I have of the year. I think it's a good season to do classics. So if we look down here, I think I don't want to be too hard on myself with classics. So there are 2 Jane Austen books that I haven't read yet, Persuasion and Mansfield Park. And Persuasion I've heard is not her best, so I think I'm gonna go with Mansfield Park for the classic. So got 1 so far. Now we have to go to sci-fi. Okay, looking at the sci-fi shelf, there's a lot up here that I've already read. I have some that I haven't read yet in Octavia E. Butler's books, so that's an option. I also have Do You Dream of Terror 2? That's an option. If we look down to the next shelf, I get a few on the next shelf as well. I haven't finished the Expanse series, so well as Altered Carbon, Cixin Liu's books. I don't think I'm gonna do those. That's short story collections. Then I also have Two Like Lightning, and then this series. I don't really want to start a new series right now, at least not a new sci-fi series, and I think I would have to reread a lot of these in order to really give Persepolis Rising a chance. So I'm gonna go down. I think we're gonna do some more classic sci-fi. to this shelf. Oh, we have Discworld. Would it be weird if I chose Discworld, even though this is my sci-fi shelf? I think that's a bad idea. I think over here, A Memory Called Empire and the Station 11, those are good options. Let's see what's behind these. Okay, wait. Okay, so we got a few pretty good options over here. I think I want to go with something a little bit more classic, but like a standalone. Contact by Carl Sagan. I think I'm going to go with that one. I feel like this is either going to be a hit or a complete miss, but I want to try it. So got my second Read It or Unhaul book. Alrighty, sorry about that. Needed more hands. All right, now going over to my fantasy shelf. So this is the fun shelf. I don't have any idea where I'm going to go with this, but I want to stay closer to the top because closer to the top means I'm more likely going to enjoy it. So let's see. I do have some books up at the top that I haven't read yet. So basically almost this whole shelf I haven't read it. This book looks really wintry. This one right here. That just looks like a book to read in January, right? So I feel like we're gonna go with The Empire's Ghost. I feel like this is a good option. And I do have the sequel to it. So if I really like this, then we can even go into like a binge read type of scenario. So I like this. Alrighty, going over to this shelf. So this is also a fantasy shelf. Because it's winter, I'm only gonna pick 2 fantasy books because there's only 2 months. This shelf's a little bit harder though because I've read most of the books on these like top 2. I don't think I have it. I mean, Child of Mad God, that series, I haven't read yet, but I feel like that's a lot of fantasy. I feel like I want something a little bit easier. We go down. You know, I've heard a lot recently about this book, An Ember in the Ashes. I've heard a lot of people talk about it recently, and they seem to really like it. So I think I'm going to try this one. I know it's YA, but I feel like this is a good option. So book number 4. Then the next fantasy shelf. So this is my YA fantasy shelf, and I don't have as many YA fantasy books that are unread, so we're including the top shelf with it. And I think I want to go to the top shelf for this one because I already picked a YA book. Kind of feel like I want to pick something from the top shelf. So we have a few options on the top shelf. I mean, we do have Heir of Fire, which is a YA book. We have some Guy Gabriel Kay books. I don't really want to do those right now, though. Then we have Kings of the Wild, The Golden Key, and then over on this side, we have Nevernight series. Everything else I've pretty much read at the top. It's really big, but I want to go with The Golden Key because this is the type of book I would literally never pick up if it wasn't for this challenge, but it's one that I've been wanting to pick up for a while, but I haven't heard anything about it. So I think this is a good option. It's huge, though. I feel like it's not going to be as hard as this looks. It's a standalone fantasy too. I want to read more standalone, so I feel like this is a good option. And last we have is my middle grade shelf, and I have no idea what I'm gonna pick on the middle grade shelf. Let's see what we can do at the top here. I feel like there's some good options here because we have this entire series, the Fallen Kingdom series, that I haven't yet read, and then pretty much everything here I also haven't yet read. I have read Half a King by Joe Abercrombie, but I haven't read Half a War. So that's an option, but I feel like I'd have to reread Half a King, so I don't want to do that. I think since it's Read It or Unhaul, I should do something that I know I probably wouldn't pick up otherwise. I'm thinking this is the one that came to mind, Miss Peregrin's Home for Peculiar Children. Some people seem to really love this, but I'm not sure if it's gonna be my cup of tea or not, but I feel like it could potentially be really great. So I think this is my last pick for the month. Alrighty, so these are the books that we picked out for the Read It or Unhaul challenge, and having them all together, it's starting to feel a bit intimidating, I'm gonna be honest, but it's only 6 books, and I have 2 months to read 6 books, so it should be no problem at all. I'm just remembering like all the other books that I want to read during this time too, and it's getting a little bit more difficult, but I think some of these I can listen to the audiobook for. Like the first one we have is Mansfield Park. This is my classic, and I love Jane Austen. I love listening to the audiobooks of these, so I'm probably going to look for an audiobook for Mansfield Park. So I'm probably not gonna read the physical book, but I do like having it, and sometimes, especially for classics, I like switching between the physical book and the audiobook. But I have not read a Jane Austen book in a while, especially not for the first time in a while. I've reread Pride and Prejudice all the time. I have not read Mansfield Park yet, and I don't know anything about it other than it's by Jane Austen. And honestly, that's all I need to know, which is why we're starting with Jane Austen. Then we have Contact by Carl Sagan. This one I feel feel like is probably gonna be hard for me, potentially. I do want to read more sci-fi, and I want to read more classic sci-fi. This is one that I know is a first contact with aliens type of book, but I've always wanted to read it, which I don't read too many of those, but I've always wanted to read this one in particular because Carl Sagan was like an actual scientist, or is an actual scientist. So I'm excited to see like his perspective on this. And I mean, it's not that big of a book. Like, it's like 300 something pages, less than 400 pages. So I definitely think I can get through this. Then switching over to middle grade, we have Miss Peregrin's Home for Peculiar Children. This is a series that I've always heard really good things about, but I've never tried, and I've always wanted to try. I do think this is another one where I could potentially end up picking up the audiobook, but like, it's such a short book. Like, it's not super long. I say that, but like, it's actually like super heavy. Like, it's thick, but it's still, again, less than 400 pages. So I think this is something that should be no problem to me, and it's middle grade. I hope that I'll end up loving this, because I generally do like middle grade books a lot, but I feel like sometimes when I'm not in the age group for the books that I'm reading, then they kind of fall flat for me sometimes. So we'll see. I don't know if I'm gonna end up loving this, but hopefully I will. And then of course for my YA book, we have An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I bought this like back when I first started booktube, because I was like, this is a book that everyone seems to love, and I had like started it a few times and just never finished it. And particularly, I did not like the audiobook for it. That's why I decided to get the physical book, and then I just never picked up the physical book. But the series finished recently, like during my reading slump, like last year or the year before, and I want to see what it's about. I've heard people talking about it recently, like people who I follow that I have similar reading taste to, and they seem to love it. So I'm quite optimistic about this one. And even though it is on the chunkier side, like it's pretty big, I feel like there's a lot of space between the words and everything. It's less than 500 pages. I feel like this is something that I could potentially fly through, so I'm definitely excited for this. And now for the ones that I'm a little bit more scared of. I'm gonna talk about The Empire's Ghost first by Isabelle Steiger. So this is a book that I really want to love. I feel like the atmosphere of this book is something that I could potentially end up loving, because look at this. Look at that gorgeous wintry atmosphere. I think this is definitely the perfect book for the month of January. I don't live anywhere where it like snows like this, so obviously I need some of those wintry vibes. So I'm definitely excited for this, but this is high fantasy, and I have tried to pick this up in the past. I read like the first chapter or two, and I ended up liking it, but I just put it down because it's one of those books that I just don't reach for. I've never heard anyone talk about it, but it's one that I have definitely been interested in picking up in the past. I am excited to finally get to this one. And then we have The Golden Key, which is the one that I'm the most scared of. This is a standalone fantasy book, and it's almost 900 pages, which is scary. I wouldn't normally pick up something like this just like on a whim, which is why it is part of this challenge, but I also don't want to unhaul it if I don't finish it. I think as long as I make good progress on it, I'm going to keep the book and like continue it into spring. But I think this will be the last one that I pick up of these 6 books, just because I am the most scared of it. I think I could finish the other ones first, and then like if I'm still in progress with this book come March, that's okay. But this one, I believe it is like a politically driven like fantasy, and it's supposed to be like slow build, very character driven, and that is what I want. At least that's what I've heard about it. It might not actually be like that. Don't take my word for it. I haven't read it yet, obviously, but it's something that I should end up absolutely loving, but I don't know, and I'm scared of it. I'm so scared of it. We're gonna try it. We're gonna try it, and hopefully I'll end up loving it. For my other challenge is my series challenge. So for this, I'm not including the 2 main series that I want to get through, which is Malazan Book of the Fallen and the Stormlight Archive. Those are just gonna be general priorities for me. The 63 other series that I have started and not finished are in this cup. Like, each color is a different genre, in case you're wondering. Both blue and green are fantasy. Blue, I believe, is YA, and then green is adult fantasy. Every season, I'm gonna have to pick 2 to 3 of these and work on those 3 series for those like 2 to 3 months at a time. For January, I'm only gonna pick 1 because I already have 2 others that I'm continuing on in January, being Malazan Book of the Fallen and the Stormlight Archive, which are 2 huge ones, but obviously those are gonna be more than 1 season. But I am gonna pick a 3rd one, so I figured might as well start now. I'm not gonna look, because I know if I'm gonna look, I'm gonna like go for the fantasy when, I mean, it's mostly fantasy anyway. So I got 1, and it's fantasy, yes, okay, that makes me happy. There are a lot of fantasy that I haven't continued on with though, because I didn't love the first book in the series. So this still could be something that I'm not super happy about. I'm giving it to you guys first. I can't see what it says. And it is the Dandelion Dynasty. Oh gosh. This is a hard one. Oh my gosh. This is like one of the hardest ones. Of course, I'll get this one in the shortest season. Okay, let me grab them. So this is the Dandelion Dynasty, and there are more books in the series, but these are the only two that I own. I have read The Grace of Kings, and I remember liking The Grace of Kings. I actually read it around the same time that I read The Way of Kings, and they're actually quite similar, like in overall structure. So that's why I ended up putting down this series. Man, and I'm reading the Stormlight Archive too already in winter, but I guess I'm also gonna continue on with the Dandelion Dynasty. I do have a really good memory of The Grace of Kings, so I don't think I need to reread this, thank God, because that is a lot. And I have heard really good things about The Wall of Storms. So I've heard really great things about this series. I think I'm gonna end up loving it. And I do remember this well enough that I do think I can continue on with Wall of Storms, but I'm starting to regret some of the choices that I've made for this TBR, because it's thick and the next few books in it are thick too. So I think it's unlikely that I'm going to finish the series in the next 2 months, but I can at least read the next book in the series, which is the one that I own. I'm gonna try. Let's put it that way. I'm gonna try and we'll see how it goes. So if you're wondering why I was regretting the choices that I made already, it's because of this section. I don't know if I can read all of those other books along with these physical books that I definitely want to get to as soon as possible. We did talk about my goal to read more series, where there are 2 series in particular that I do want to finish this year. So I've actually kind of mapped out how I want to finish those series. And the first one, of course, is Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erikson. So this series is a 10-book series. It's super long, but I have read these 2 previously and I have loved them. So we have Gardens of the Moon, which is the first book in the series, and Dead House Gates. I'm planning to read 1 book a month from the series since there's 10 books in the series. 1 book per month. I'll finish all of the books by the end of the year, which is great. So in winter, I'm going to be rereading the first 2 books in the series so I can just get refamiliarized with the series, and then starting in spring and summer I can get on and finish the rest of the series. So I am excited to read these, but they are a little harder reads. Gardens of the Moon is going to be for January. Dead House Gates for February. I have already tabbed out like how much I have to read like in each setting that I'm planning to read. So I mean, I'll get this done and I'm excited for it, along with all the other books that I picked. It's gonna be a lot to say the least, but I am excited for these, and I'm glad that these are rereads, so like I can probably get through them a little bit faster than I would have the first time around. Now, this is one of those series that I don't really know how to explain, other than it's like one of the most intimidating like large epic fantasy series out there, but it's also one of the most rewarding in my opinion. I absolutely love the first 2 books in the series, which I've already read, and I've heard the later books are even better. So like this is one that I really want to prioritize and I'm really excited to get back into. The other series that I mentioned that I want to continue this year is the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and in winter that means continuing on with Rhythm of War. Yes, I don't plan to read Wind and Truth next couple of months. I just think I have too much going on, but I do plan to get through with Rhythm of War. I'm giving myself the full 2 months. That should be more than enough time to get through this ginormous book. Already tabbed out how I'm gonna read it, so I'm really excited for this. But yeah, there's going to be a lot going on. This is the 4th book in the Stormlight Archive. If you haven't heard of the Stormlight Archive, where have you been? Because this is Brandon Sanderson's like most epic series and I'm enjoying it so far. And the last physical book on this list I'm gonna be getting to in winter is actually a new release, so I don't have it yet, and that is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the 3rd book in like the 4th Wing series, so I do plan on rereading both 4th Wing and Iron Flame in anticipation of Onyx Storm. I've actually already started 4th Wing. I've read these a while ago. I actually don't remember that much that happened in them, but I remember enjoying the experience a lot, so I'm excited to see where the series goes. This is a story about dragon riders, and the main character is going to like a dragon rider school, and it is a romantasy. So there's obviously going to be a romance involved, but there's also action involved, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. So I enjoyed it a lot when I read it the first time, so I do plan to reread both of these before Onyx Storm comes out so that I can read Onyx Storm as soon as it comes out as well. Next, we're going to talk about the ebooks that I plan to read before the end of winter. The first one is Blood Over Brighthaven by ML Wang. I've heard lots of great things about this, and the ebook was on sale not too long ago for $2.99, so I was like, let me get the ebook. And then at the same time I got it, I just got the audiobook for it. it, so I might switch between the two. Wang wrote The Sword of Kaigan, which was a book that I read a couple years ago and really loved. I specifically love her, her characterization and how she writes magic and world building. So I'm really excited to get into a new book by her, and this is a standalone fantasy novel. I don't know anything about the book itself other than I've heard really good reviews of it, so I'm really excited for this. Then I have two e-arcs that I'm super excited for. The first one I have been talking about all the time, and that is A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is gonna be the next ebook that I read once I finish the one that I'm currently reading, and this is the sequel to The Tainted Cup, which I have been raving about this all the time, so I feel like you guys probably know by now, but the series started out as like a murder mystery plot, but it's set in a fantasy world, and the second book is supposed to have a lot more political intrigue, which I'm super excited about. Then the other e-arc that I'm super excited to get to is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. Joe Abercrombie is one of my favorite authors of all time, so obviously if he's coming out with a new book, I am going to be reading it. And this is set in a different fantasy world than he's had before, and it is following a character named Brother Diaz, who is like a religious figure of some sort, but he also has like the devils on his side, which I don't know what that means, and I don't need to know what that means, and I'm hoping that it's gonna be like a new favorite of all time. Next, we're gonna talk about the audiobooks that I want to read, and the audiobooks is where I start branching outside of the fantasy genre. Audiobooks are generally where I'm super comfortable, so because of that, I feel like I could read other genres on audio pretty easily. So the first one that I want to read is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, and I think What Feasts at Night as well, probably because they're both super short. I believe these are supposed to be horror, and T. Kingfisher is an author that I've come to like a lot, so I'm really excited to read more by her, and I literally just got the audiobook for What Moves the Dead, so this is gonna be like one of the first audiobooks that I pick up in January, and I'm super excited for it. I love her like atmospheric writing, and even though this one is not really supposed to be fantasy, like it's supposed to be more of the horror genre, I do like to read authors that I've liked in one genre, see how they write in another genre, so I think this could be quite interesting, so I'm pretty excited about this one. The next one that I have is Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky. A little bit over a month ago now, I read Children of Time, absolutely loved it, like kind of blew my mind with how good it was, and it kind of got me more excited for sci-fi, so I definitely plan on continuing on with the series. Definitely gonna get to Children of Ruin. If I have time, I'll also do Children of Memory, I think it is, the third book in the series, but I'm not sure yet. Might wait till the spring. I do like having a little bit of time between my sci-fis just because I don't read that many of them, so it depends on how I'm feeling, but I do plan on getting to Children of Ruin very soon. I have it on hold at my library, should be getting it in the next couple of weeks, and this is a hard sci-fi series. The first one was following like humans in the very distant future and like this experiment kind of like alien life form that the humans had to negotiate with, which I just found incredibly interesting. They're spiders, basically, the alien life form, and we got to follow like the spider colony as well, like, and their growth and development, which I found super fascinating, and I'm really excited to get to the next book in the series. Next, we have a historical fiction, and that's The Women by Kristin Hanna. Kristin Hanna is one of my favorite authors of all time. I don't read her that often because she does write historical fiction, which is not generally a genre that I read, but whenever she does have one, I do try to get to it, and this one people seem to really love. It is a wartime historical fiction. I believe it's following women in the Vietnam War. I might not be right about that. Because if it's an autobiography for me, I don't really try to learn too much about the book before I pick it up because I like to go into them blind, but I'm definitely excited for this one. This one won the Goodreads Choice Award for Best Historical Fiction by like a mile. Like, it had so many votes over all of the other choices, so I'm really excited to see why so many people seem to love it. And last but not least, we have my nonfiction, and that is Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari. I have loved at least two of the other books that I've read by him. Both of them were also nonfiction. The first one, and is probably my favorite by him, is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, and I found that incredibly fascinating, and his storytelling ability just worked really well in the novel, so I feel like this one should be really interesting as well. And this one is kind of on the same like structure as that one, except instead of a history of humans, it's a history of information, which I also find incredibly fascinating. So it should get to like our age, the internet age, but but I wanted to see kind of like how it works before that as well. So this is definitely one that I'll be picking up. I already have the audiobook on hold, so I'm excited to get to it. Before we end this video, I do have a few more books that I wanted to mention. These are not books that I'm absolutely going to get to. They're not books that I'm putting any pressure on myself to get to, but they are books that I feel like had my eye on and I feel like I could pick up in this time period that I just wanted to mention really quickly. The first one is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harper. So this is a book about 40 women that were like held underground in like a cage for like many years, and it's told from the perspective of a 13-year-old girl among these women, basically has never known men before. And I heard that it's like kind of like feminist like literary literature, so think like The Handmaid's Tale or something like that. Maybe not quite that dystopian, hopefully not, but I've heard that like it really gets you thinking, and I feel like that's just something that I wanted to try, and it's been very popular recently, and it's super short, so I feel like I can get to this. Also, I have this kind of like tradition of starting and finishing 5-star read on the first of the year. Usually I do it with like a contemporary romance, but like one that like dives into like darker topics and things like that, but I feel like this is a good potential for that as well. I don't know if I will pick this one up on the first of the year, but I feel like this is an option for that, and I do really want to get to it. I did buy this kind of for that purpose though, so I think I will get to it. It's a little bit different than I would normally pick up for that, because I usually want to start my year pretty like happy, and I feel like this is not going to be a happy book. Then we have both Hidden Warrior and Oracle Queen by Lynn Fleeweling. I've been reading the Bone Dolls Twin by the same author, first book in the series, and I have been enjoying it a lot. I do think there are a lot of series that I want to kind of like finish in like the winter months, so I don't think I would necessarily pick these up right away, but I am enjoying the series enough that I kind of do want to continue it on with it as soon as possible. So I think this is definitely a series that I'll just have on the back burner of like things that I can pick up during the month, especially like if I finish my ebooks or something like super early. This is something I can get from the library pretty easily, and I can continue on with it. And in this series, we're following the character named Tobin, who was born as a girl but has been changed to look like a boy because her uncle is a patriarchal leader who doesn't want the matriarchal line to threaten his rule, even though like she is technically the rightful queen of their kingdom. And it's just been interesting really far. It is definitely super dark, and there is a demon involved, and there's just so many great things about this series, and I'm really loving it so far. Next we have The Story of a New Name by Elena Ferrante. This is the second book in the Neapolitan series, and honestly just the Neapolitan series in general. I'm currently reading My Brilliant Friend, which is the first book in the series, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It is kind of like historical / contemporary in some aspects, but it's literary fiction, but I'm still enjoying it. I'm listening to the audiobook, so if I get audiobook for the next book in the series, I will probably continue on with it if I have like a break in audiobooks. I'm enjoying it so far. It's about two girls that grew up in Italy and kind of like their lives. It sounds boring, but it's just very character driven in like a good way, and I have been enjoying it quite a bit. So I would like to continue on with the series eventually. Then we have The Wedding People by Alison Espach. Book won the Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Fiction of 2024, and I just find the concept sounds really interesting. It's about a woman who like goes to this hotel like to off herself, but there is a wedding at the hotel, and her and the bride get into kind of a thing because the bride obviously does not want this woman to do that on her wedding day. So it's just a really interesting like concept and setup, and I'm excited to see how it goes. And this is just another audiobook that I could potentially pick up, just like when I'm between other audiobooks. And lastly, we have The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. So this is just a book that I've been wanting to pick up for a while, and I just have not got around to it. It doesn't fit like any of my goals for the year. For that reason, like it's not higher on my like priorities for winter, because like my goals for the year is like all about continuing series and finishing series, and this will be the first book in a new series. It's also by an author that I've never read before, but I've been wanting to read John Gwynne for a while now. I've heard really good things about his books. I feel like he could be like similar to Joe Abercrombie for me, where I end up really loving his books. So that's why I wanted to start with this one. While his other series is beloved also, this series seems to be the one that people like more, which I did start Malice, and I loved like the first chapter of Malice that I started. But because I found out the series is like slightly more beloved, I do want to start with this series. And just because I've been burned reading from a new author for the first time by starting starting with like their first book versus starting with their most popular book. I've always found starting with their most popular book is better. Just trust me, starting with their most popular book is always better, and that's why I wanted to start with this one. Not that Malice is significantly less liked than Shadow of the Gods, but I just feel like people seem to love this series a lot, and I feel like it's just the type of series that I would normally read. This is like epic fantasy, and it's like modern epic fantasy, which I feel like we don't get a lot of it. So I'm really excited for this. Honestly, this is one I feel like it even shouldn't be on this list because I just have so many other things that I want to get to, but at the same time, this is probably one of the things that I'm the most excited for. I feel like I probably will get to this one when I'm just like in a mood and don't want to read anything else. This is probably what I'll end up picking up. So that is all I have for today. Let me know what books you're planning to read in the next few months, or if you are planning to read any of the books that I've mentioned. I would love to hear from you. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. I do have a goal of posting at least one video per week in 2025, but I also have a schedule of definitely more than that per week. So please subscribe if you want more videos like this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.